There we go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Starchuk. I'm the MLA for Surrey Cloverdale and the chair of the Select Standing Committee on Finance and Government Services, committee of the Legislative Assembly that includes MLAs from government and opposition. Before I continue, I'm just going to make my land acknowledgement that I come to you today from the Coast Salish people, specifically Katzie, Kwantlen, and Samiam First Nations, and that I'd ask everybody to take the time to reflect on the lands that they live, work, and play on. We're going to begin our meeting in an in-camera portion, following which we'll be hearing from supplementary funding requests from the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner. So I'll ask for a motion to go in camera. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. The All right, the committee is now in public session. There we go. Well, there's Michael. Good morning, Michael. So at this point, Michael, with you and your team, will now hear a supplementary funding request from the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner. Michael, we've set aside 10 minutes for the presentation, followed by up to 10 minutes for committee questions. So if you're ready, if you want to go ahead, you can proceed with your presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair, Deputy Chair, and members of the committee. I would first like to acknowledge and respect that I am presenting to you today from the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. As an officer of this legislature, I also acknowledge that I am privileged to work with people across many traditional Indigenous territories covering all regions of our province. Assisting me this morning are Deputy Commissioner Oline Twiss, Acting Deputy Commissioner Tanya Allen, and Dave Van Sweeten, Deputy of Shared Services for the 4 officers of the legislature headquartered at 947 Fort Street. Thank you for granting me time this morning in what I know is a packed agenda to consider my request for supplemental funding for the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner in the 2024-25 fiscal year. As a submission before you outlines, I am requesting supplemental funding for $410,000 in operating funds for this fiscal to address the increased costs my office faces relating to judicial reviews and appeals. I come before you today as I've reviewed our budget in detail and determined that we have exhausted the flexibility within it and cannot absorb these cost pressures in this fiscal without impacting service to the public. To provide some background, judicial reviews and appeals stem from my office's decisions involving matters of compliance relating to public bodies or organizations under our Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act or Personal Information Protection Act. OIPC decisions contain findings or orders and include public reports initiated by the Commissioner, orders issued by adjudicators, or decisions on complaint files by investigators. These can proceed to the courts when an individual, public body, or organization is not satisfied with the decision made by me or a delegate at either the investigative or adjudicative level. What makes this especially challenging from a budgetary and planning perspective is that the OIPC does not have any control over whether a file proceeds to judicial review, and once a JR or appeal is filed, the OIPC must respond and participate in the process. For our discussion this morning, I've separated out the types of files that can proceed to the courts into 3 different categories. I will speak to each in turn. The first deals with litigation on commissioner-initiated investigations. These investigations result in a public report and are conducted when the commissioner has reasonable grounds to believe there is non-compliance with the law or if it is in the public interest. They serve as an important way to carry out our mandate to hold public bodies and organizations accountable while providing transparency for people living in British Columbia. These reports also provide education so that other public bodies and organizations can learn from real cases about how to follow the law and how my office interprets the law when it comes to matters of access and privacy. At this time, there are 2 commissioner-initiated investigations that are playing out before the courts and contributing to the significant legal costs we face. These are complex files that tackle important issues on the interpretation of our access and privacy laws. They address issues that impact on the access and privacy rights of people living in BC. For example, one commissioner-initiated report could set out a matter of interpretation about a new technology or a manner of doing business and can impact multiple sectors of our economy and society. And they are hard to forecast because they are one-off cases. There is no trend or rationale that can predict what will end up before the courts. Without getting into specifics, as these cases that are resulting in increased courts are currently before the courts, I can give a brief example of a matter that has been before the courts since 2020. The OIPC investigation report on the Life Labs breach that this office conducted with our counterpart in Ontario. As you may remember, that 2019 privacy breach affected millions of Canadians, resulted in a class action lawsuit, and involved personal information of patients in BC that use Life Labs for medical laboratory testing results. While Life Labs agreed to the recommendations and orders contained in the report, they appealed the publication of the report in 2020, claiming it contained solicitor-client and litigation privileged information. In April of this year, the court unanimously upheld our decision and held that health information custodians cannot evade their responsibilities by categorizing facts about privacy breaches as privileged information. However, LifeLabs appealed the court's decision, and we await a ruling from the Court of Appeal as to whether we are able to ultimately publish the report. This is just one example of how the court costs can add up, especially when many levels of the courts are involved. Another area where we have seen an increase in costs is for judicial reviews of orders issued by adjudicators. We knew that when we added FTEs to address the backlog at adjudications in 2020, that there would be an eventual uptick in judicial reviews at that level. As the number of orders increased, so too did we expect a proportionate increase in judicial reviews. So far, that has progressed at a rate we anticipated. While this increase does have an impact on our legal costs, the typical judicial review over what I would categorize as the meat and potatoes of the files we see are not yet a significant contributor to the overall unexpected increase we are facing. What we have seen, as I mentioned a moment ago, is that it is a small number of files that deal with complex issues and judicial interpretations that are incurring the rising costs. These files involve parties with big interests that are committed to seeing their case through to the end. They also typically involve a party that is a large institution with the resources to bring their case to the courts in the hopes of getting their desired outcome. To give you an example, a recent decision by the Supreme Court upheld an OIPC decision that determined PIPA applied to the Grand Forks and Coldstream congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses. The two congregations appealed the initial order, where two applicants requested access to their own personal information, because the congregations believed PIPA did not apply to them. The congregations also claimed that PIPA was unconstitutional, specifically the provisions that gave the applicants and the commissioner access to personal information and records under the control of religious organizations. So as you can see, a big issue that goes beyond the organization in question, with the court's interpretation providing a path for future decisions. Finally, we have seen a sharp increase in court costs for judicial reviews, appeals of decisions made by our investigations team. An individual is entitled to go to the courts once a decision is made by an OIPC investigator, and this historically has happened on occasion once or twice a year. However, in the last couple of years, we have had a handful of people petition the courts and take decisions at first instance to the appeal level, often where the individual has a passionate interest in their position and wants to pursue the matter as far as they can. These files can have questions of abusive process or vexatious conduct in the mix, and particularly when appealed, they are costly for the OIPC to respond to. Still, in the interest of justice, we must respond to these petitions in a manner that upholds the mandate of the Commissioner under FIPA and PIPA to provide that independent oversight over complaints to the OIPC. Which brings me to why I'm here before you today, to request supplemental funding to address these pressures, and frankly, why we were unable to predict this increase in the previous budget cycle. When we initially saw these costs start to rise last year, we were able to manage within our existing budget through recruitment lag. However, and this, both fortunately and unfortunately, we have not experienced any significant staff turnover this year. We're a victim of our own success, if you will, which leaves us in the position where we are not able to absorb these unexpected costs. Should we not receive the funding, I would need to reduce staff. This is because the judicial review and appeal costs are entirely outside the control of our office. The consequence of, for example, reducing contract and auxiliary staff would increase the size of the queue of people waiting for their complaints or requests to be heard, a wait time that we have worked very hard to reduce this year and we're seeing progress on. It would be frustrating to erase this progress that we have made in service of the public for the majority of our clients for the sake of a small number of matters before the courts. Further, the scope of the problem is that even if we did reduce contract and auxiliary staff, it would not generate sufficient savings to fill the gap. With that, Chair, I thank you and the committee for your care and attention to this matter. My team and I would now be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Michael, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. This is your opportunity right there. Tom.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Michael, for the update. The request here is almost double to what was budgeted 2024, 25. And you've gone to great length in proving the case that there's a lot more up on the table here than you're normally used to. Am I to think the caseload now that you're experiencing right now is double to what was first budgeted, or is it more complex files? You mentioned there's no real trends. That was going to be my other question, but
Yes.
it seems like it's be random, but maybe you can expand on that.
Yeah, it's not the number, it's the complexity of the cases that are the issue. If it was a number, then I think we'd be in a better position to forecast trends. That's we expected a volume to increase, as I mentioned, when we added those adjudicators to beat down the backlog. We expected a proportional increase in the number of JRs, and we have seen that. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. What's really driving the costs are the small number of very expensive files that was hard to predict. Even it was hard to predict at budget time last year when we came forward with our budget, but it was also hard to predict even a few months ago when my predecessor was here to talk to you. So we didn't have that data then. We have it now. That's why I'm here.
Tom, is it a follow-up or a separate question? Otherwise, I'll go to Henry.
Yeah, it's a follow-up a little
Okay.
bit, but it was just to expand on what you said earlier about victim of your own success.
Mm.
And is that just maybe expand on that a little bit, and just maybe it's because the office is becoming more accessible, I guess. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, no. What the implication is that so for years we've generated savings on our salary budget because people will move on to different positions. We don't like it when people move on to a different position. Of course, people progress in their careers, and we applaud them for that. But when they move on, of course, they create a vacancy. It takes 3 to 4 months to fill a vacancy. That generates salary savings that we're then able to use to absorb unforeseen costs. But what we're seeing in the present year is for a number of reasons. In particular, I would say our hybrid work environment is very attractive to people, and so our staff are staying because I guess they like to work with us, and we provide a good competitive place to work with. But what that means is it's not generating those savings that we predicted in our salary budget, that we're not able to absorb these unforeseen costs like we were last year.
Okay. Henry.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael, for your presentation. So I just have one, I guess, bear with me. I'm trying to understand the situation. Obviously, you're saying this unforeseeable sudden rise of complex minor small group is creating a very complex casework. That's the reason why it has a sudden increase of cost. So my question right now is, are we expecting this more for a one-time here and there, or do you believe in that as we move towards the future, because of more stable working environment, you have less likely of staff moving around, so therefore you have less flexibility to address those flexible costs? Will this kind of unforeseeable, as you mentioned earlier, or one-time issue become more of a pattern, or is it just something just this year, next year, and we're expecting a downtrend regarding to the expenses associated with this kind of complicated cases?
Yeah, that's a very astute question, and it is the question of the day. I think, and there's a couple questions in there, so I'm going to try to address them in turn. The first is, do we based our our assumptions on the savings we might see in our salary budget to deal with unforeseen costs based upon past year's practice. And what we're seeing this year is, yeah, we're seeing less salary savings in that area. So next year, when we come forward and we prepare our materials for December 5th in advance of when I come back before this committee for our next year's budget and the 3 years following, we'll probably project out those savings in a different way. That's going to require some analysis, but probably we will project that we're not going to see so much salary lag to deal with unforeseen costs. The second part of your question, if I understood you correctly, is, are we identifying any trends in legal costs that we might see those kind of unforeseen costs going up into the future? And I think the answer is that when we come back for the budget ask for next year and the fiscal forecast for the coming years, we will attempt to do a projection out there so that we project out better than we did this year. But that said, I'm not asking for that today because I don't have the data to project that today. We are seeing these one-time shocks. There are some underlying trends, like I mentioned, the increase in volume because we added on those adjudicators should be driving up our costs over time. But I don't have the data to say so now. But when we come back in a number of months, we'll have better data, and I will give a projection now. Anything that I would do now will be a guess rather than projection, and I think it's better for me to come forward with a projection that's evidence-based.
Okay. Susie, then Ben.
Thank you so much. Now I'm trying to figure out how to frame this question in a way that makes sense to me, let alone everybody else. But are we concerned that some of the things that are coming forward to you are maybe just there to test the waters and become complex because of that? And I don't know how to say that effectively because I know that there's other places where, for instance, freedom of information questions come forward because they just want to be, I'm going to use the word mischievous, even though that's bad. And I'm just wondering if some of the stuff that you're getting now that things have have changed in terms of the legislation and stuff, are actually just testing the waters to see where they go. Is that a possibility, and is that something that is adding to the cost and the complexity of things? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I think it speaks to, I think, what I expect a lot of people are thinking about what's going on with largely our freedom of information system, but it also applies to our privacy system as well. I'll answer that by talking about three different types of matters that we would see. So you use the word mischievous, a word that is grounded in our laws across the country, and here is this idea of vexatiousness. So some people will come forward, and a lot of the time these are self-represented clients. In my remarks, the words that I used were people who had a passionate interest in their matter, when we use the word vexatious, it's almost to imply that these people always have some sort of malicious intent, and sometimes there are elements of their approach that indeed have some character of malice about them. But I think it is actually fairer to say that they're passionate. And while it may sometimes manifest and become vexatious, and you can get some real heat involved in it, and that is indeed the case. And we have to be very careful in that case about protecting our staff but it's I wouldn't necessarily imply that all of them across the board are inherently malicious. I would say passionate is a better answer. The other category of testing the water, I think, are big firms or organizations like the Jehovah's Witnesses congregations that I mentioned, that are really exploring areas of the law that really need judicial interpretation. And so I think this is a legitimate exercise, and we need to be there, because that's how we come to understand how our laws operate in the real world. And so those can be complicated and expensive, but the answer is that's the legitimate exercise. That's what this mandate is all about. I hope that answers your question.
It does indeed. Thank you so much.
You want me to go ahead, Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. Thanks very much, Commissioner Harvey. I know that this is the second time that you've come back in front of the committee for supplemental funding this year. The committee has sent out documentation. This is more about going ahead, looking at your budget for the future, but we really want to stress with all of the offices that they look ahead and that they accurately try to forecast. There's been a huge rise in costs across the board. Some of them have been scope creep because of laws that have been added. And I think in regards to MLA Chance, just last remarks, maybe if there was some things like, I know that for freedom of information, the fees have been there, but there is often those type of people that just use the system. And frankly, they've increased the fees to make it so that it's, you have to at least give some consideration. And if there is no cost to that or no implicate costs or whatever, maybe that's another way of controlling these costs, because we do see it in many of the offices that it's just it's an open-ended pipeline. So.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Do I have time, Chair, to respond?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Mr. Stewart, I think you're right. We consider this matter all the time. I will say that in my experience in my previous jurisdiction, what we found with particularly vexatious clients, some of the ones that really would generate a lot of work for our office, that the fee was not a deterrent. Sometimes it was remarkable. People held those views so passionately that they would pay the $10 fees and more. And really, it's the court costs when these folks get to court. That's really where the issues is. And I've been surprised sometimes at the amount of money that people will come up with to continue to pursue these matters. Sometimes that it is evident to everybody else are going nowhere for them. But I'm amazed at how much money they're coming up with. But that said, these are the kind of things we're looking about. We're looking at the process of costs before the courts. That's another issue. But what the piece of work that we've tried to do to manage this for our office is to really work on the clarity of our processes internally. We don't treat any clients differently, but we need to make sure that our regulatory pipeline throughout our office is clear and clean so that we avoid people kind of gumming up the works with procedural tangles. But that said, the issues that you point out are really important. We are going to continue to bear down on them. And when we come forward with projections for the budget year next year and out years, I certainly pledge to do my very best to predict that with the best accuracy that the numbers at hand allow me to do so.
Okay. Yeah, I think Ben and I are on the same page. Is about providing us with the best guess, so to speak. There's a lot of things that people can look at to try to get there. So, no, Michael, thank you, and to your team of online, Tanya and Dave for being here this morning. I hope you've adapted to the West Coast time zone. Finally, is there something over there, Nick, that I'm missing?
You're missing Ron Array.
Ron Array? Oh, Ron Array. Oh, there we are. That is completely in the other corner from what you were looking at. Okay, I'm sorry, Ron Array.
No, you were wrapping up nicely, but I did want to say thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Harvey. I was that commitment to our judicial process and making sure it follows through to the final say so. The period at the end of the sentence is really important. But the last thing that you were saying, I wanted to just draw attention to, is that making sure that your processes were such that there's that mitigating factor in there to prevent that end result where people end up going to court, trying to make sure people felt like they had been involved in a fair process. So I just wanted to congratulate you and say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, then that concludes the presentation. So we'll have a quick pause while Michael, you and your team depart us.
Thank you very much, committee, Mr. Chair, Mr. Deputy Chair, and all the members.
Okay, I think they're all gone. So the committees have received some follow-up information from the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner regarding supplementary funding request that they presented last month. So at this point now, the committee will consider that information in camera. And so I'll ask for a motion to go in camera.
So moved.
All those in favor, motion carried. All right. The committee is now in session, and I believe the first motion that we have in front of us is the supplementary funding request. Is that no? Oh, it's the other one. Oh, so the first motion is the appointment of acting Auditor General, of who we have Sheila Dodds as the person that is being brought forward as the appointed person to be the acting Auditor General. So this requires a show of hands. So all of those.
No, sorry, Chair, I need to move the motion first.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, somebody's going to move a motion. There we go. Jump the gun. Tom.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to move that the Select Standing Committee on Finance and Government Services appoint Sheila Dodds as acting Auditor General effective November 15th, 2024, pursuant to Section 7, Sub 4 of the Auditor General Act.
All right. Is there a seconder to that motion? Any comments? Not seeing any of those. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay. I believe, Jennifer, we have it as unanimous. Okay. And now we have a motion to the supplementary funding request of the Information and Privacy Commissioner. Susie.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the committee recommend the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner be granted access to supplementary funding up to $410,000 for operating expenditures in 2024-25 to support increased costs related to judicial reviews and appeals.
Right. Do you have a seconder? Okay, we have a seconder. Any comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Contrary? Carried. All right then. So that, if I have it correct in front of me, concludes everything that is on our agenda for today. I wanted to say, oh, sorry, Ben?
Yeah, just before the committee adjourns, and being that this is likely to be the last meeting that I'll be involved with, I just wanted to thank the staff. Jonathan and Katie, it's been a pleasure to work with you. And I know that your world will change when there's a new committee. But anyways, it's been really a pleasure to work with Jennifer, your people, and the staff that have been on the floor with us. So thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, no, I echo what Ben said. This is I think I'm the only person that's been here for all 4 years. So I've seen the evolution of how this has all come into play, and it has been a positive thing at the end of the day, where we're actually being able to get the work done for the people of British Columbia. There's a clear path forward, and I am hopeful, fingers crossed, that the work that this committee has done for the last 4 years will set the pace of what the next four were there. So a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Those in favor? Contrary? Carried. Enjoy your afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.